What's up, everybody? I am so fired up, guys. Not only do I have one of my close friends on, but I also have I've met a lot of entrepreneurs in my day. This dude started earlier than any human being I've ever encountered in my life. You know, he is 14, probably 15 years, or if probably more than that, as an entrepreneur, and the guy is well over a decade younger than me. So I am super fired up. He owns the largest real estate team in Arizona, KPZ. He is also one of the biggest real estate wholesalers in the entire country, and he did it all, by the time that most of you guys are probably figuring out what you want to do in life. So welcome, my boy, Austin Zaback.
Dude, I appreciate you having me, bro. Yeah, it's an honor to be on here, and hopefully we can drop a lot of value today, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So one of the things I want to get right into is you have a crazy story. So I know I was fortunate when I grew up. My mom and dad, even though we didn't have money, they were there all the time. They were very good parents. I grew up in a white picket fence, even though it was, very middle class. And a lot of times I'll encounter people and they're like, well, you have a really good family. I've gone through this and that. Honestly, from your story, which I want you to tell, if anybody wasn't going to make it as an entrepreneur, it would have been how you started and grew up. So, why don't you just kind of share that? Because it's a crazy story.
Yeah, I'll give you the quick version because I know people get bored with that. But, at 7 years old, I moved full-time with my grandpa and grandma in their garage. And then I started my first pool company at like 8, right? And my grandpa owned a pool company. They didn't make a lot of money though, but they were business owners, right? And so I saw the time freedom, not necessarily financial freedom, but they worked on their own hours. So my grandpa taught me how to do pools. He would pay me $1 a pool from basically 7 years old till 8. And then I started my own route at 8, and by the time I was probably 10 or 11, I was making $3 or $4 grand a month, right? And which is a lot of money when you're 11 years old, right? And it was all cash, and so I blew all my money, dude. I freaking from 10 years old till 15 years old, I blew every dollar I made. I probably blew 200 grand by the time I was like 15. On everything you could imagine, man, from airsoft to paintball to like RC helicopters and everything you could imagine. But it was a rough upbringing, right? My mom and my dad got divorced. There was a lot of not good stuff going on, right? Just my mom and dad didn't want me and my grandparents. I didn't want to be with either of them. There was a lot of drama in the family, right? And I did my own thing. My grandparents never told me what to do, right? And so I ended up getting in a lot of trouble. I ended up doing whatever I wanted. I raised myself pretty much. My grandparents are amazing, by the way. But they're grandparents, right? You know, so they never really told me what to do or anything. And I just made a lot of mistakes, man, at an early age, And by the time I was about 15 and a half, I got into network marketing, got out of the pool thing. And then that was really what opened my eyes to being a real deal entrepreneur, right? Because I was hanging out with Alex Morton, Brad Alcazan, if you're familiar with some of the names. At the time, they were making, 100, 150 grand a month. And this was, 2012, 2013, whenever, right? Maybe even earlier than that, 2011. And I was like, dang, dude, like, these guys are driving Rolls Royces and Aventadors. And I'm like, I could do that too, right? Like, these guys are normal, And so that, one thing led to the next. And then eventually I got into real estate. I worked a bunch of jobs that I didn't like. Then I got into real estate. And kind of the rest is history from there. I still failed a lot throughout my real estate career. I would, go and start an ATM company or a marketing company, and I ended up shutting them down. I've started like 12 different companies, and I only run half of them now today. Yeah.
It's funny. I think a lot of times, and something Alex Hormozi recently said in a video, and he went in and he was like, the first 9 businesses I started failed. 9, right? And I know, even looking at myself, I probably, like you, started maybe 15 businesses, right? Of those 15 businesses, 3 make money, 4 is in like the incubator phase. But people yet think we're successful because they just remember those ones, right? Now, when you looked at it and you decided, hey, you know what? I am able to actually do this as a young age, even I had a bad upbringing. I know for me, like, I put wealthy people on a pedestal and I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are so much smarter than me, so much this. But I didn't hang out with them until probably in my late 20s. And then I realized, like, these guys aren't smarter than me. These guys, maybe they work a little bit harder or do that. Do you think because you were able to surround yourself with super successful people at a very, very young age that you had a lot more kind of courage and risk tolerance to do things rather than most people at your age?
100%. Like it wouldn't literally, I would not be where I'm at today had that not happened. You know, I always tell people too, like I didn't end up staying in network marketing, obviously, but that industry did change my life because that industry allowed me to go to big events and go to big masterminds. Like, dude, I remember, you know, at a young age, I was behind stage, you know, with Bob Proctor, Linda Proctor, you know, Eric Thomas, you know, I remember Gary Vee, like when Gary Vee was like not who he is today, right? Like way back in the day. And because I was really close with all the top earners in that company, and I really got around that type of demographic, and it 100% changed my life because that was the reason that I opened my eyes and I was like, two things. Number one, holy cow, there's a lot of money in the world. Yeah. Right? Like it really was like that aha moment of like, dang, like there's enough to go around for everybody, right? Yeah. And then number two, it was like, wait, these guys are really normal. Like if they did it, I could do it, right? Because, you know, before that, like I had a lisp. I still have a lisp to this day, you know, and I didn't do good in school and so I had everything kind of working against me. But when I met the Eric Thomases of the world, you know, I was like, dude, like these guys are like really normal. Like they had, a lot of them have rougher upbringings than me, you know, and I'm like, dang, like if they can do it, if they can, you know, overcome all that adversity, then why can't I? Yeah. Right. And that really, dude, it gave me that kind of little push, man. And from there, it was like, it just stuck with me, you know? Yeah.
You know, and I think one of the things that too is, when a lot of people see these wealthy people, they think everything they do turns to gold, right? Like you're just like, oh, because people only see the successes of people, right? And I think when you got potentially around those people, you probably saw a lot of the things that they failed at and probably gave you some of the insight to be like, you know what? Like, who cares? Might as well take a shot, right? Might as well swing. Like, I can get to that point. And kind of on that note, you know, I always like to ask people, we always hear about all the wins, right? We hear about all the wins, right? And so looking back, you know, because how old are you right now?
29. I just turned 29.
Yeah. See, exactly. And so at 29 up to this point, what would you say right now has been the very worst investment that you made, like money lost, and like what'd you learn on it?
Yeah, money lost, man. I mean, I it's hard because there's a lot. You know, I've made a lot of bad investments. You know, to narrow it down to one is difficult. I would say a couple. If I could give you a couple, one of them would be, you know, just in dumb stuff. So not in depreciating crap. Right? Like I've owned 27 cars in my life. I'm 29, right? You know, and only 2 of them I made money or broke even on. Meaning 25 of them I lost my ass, right? And they were all bad investments. I mean, I didn't need any of them. I could have had $3 more million in the bank right now, probably, you know? So I bought dumb stuff to impress people at the time that didn't give a shit, right? And I learned that, and now I know that, and so that was one big one, right? Another one, which is not necessarily money, it kind of is that I always would get shiny object syndrome as I was an entrepreneur. So like I would own these real estate companies, and then I would like see like, oh, there's a really good opportunity over there, and I would go invest like $200,000 into like starting an ATM company, for example. And don't get me wrong, it made a lot of money. We grew it to a couple hundred ATMs, you know, nationwide. But it took my focus away from the thing that I was amazing at. And it would always take me a year or two to recognize that. And imagine the amount of money I lost in that time. Millions of dollars. Because I was dabbling in too much crap, and I wasn't focused on what I was good at, right? And so ultimately, dude, I shut all that crap down. Probably lost, I mean, multiple millions of dollars. And you know, time, money, energy, right? And then I would go back and I'd be like, okay, I've got to focus on what I'm good at, right? And what I know can scale and be phenomenal, you know, and that was always real estate for me. The other ones are just going to be like crypto. You know, I've lost a lot of money in crypto. Now I'm back. I love crypto. But I was an idiot when I was young. I bought, you know, dude, I owned 85 Bitcoin in 2020.
Oh my God.
You know, and I can show you on my Coinbase after. I'll show you what I sold it at, and you'll freaking fall out of your chair, man. You know, and so, you know, had I held that, right, I'm like you. I'm a believer by, I think 2030, 2032, Bitcoin will eventually be $1 million a coin, right? I watch Michael Saylor and all the people, you know, and, you know, so like, I really wish I wouldn't have sold that. So there's just dumb stuff
Yeah.
you do, I think, when you're an entrepreneur and you look back and you're like, why did I do that?
Yep.
Like, what? I'm such an idiot. Like, at the time, it's like even the Bitcoin, I sold it and I didn't even need the money at the time. I just didn't know. I didn't know any better. I wasn't paying attention to the market. I wasn't listening to the right people. I wasn't thinking about the long term of where can this actually go?
Yep.
And so, a lot of bad investments.
Yeah, and I think one of the things for me, because I'm the same way, and I notice this, anybody have you ever taken the culture index test?
I haven't done that one. No.
So we just went, and the company that acquired, a company called Aveo that acquired 45% of Solar Energy that we're part of now, one of the requirements as part of the merger, they flew us all out to Salt Lake, and they brought this gentleman that is named Chuck. Chuck is, so say when Microsoft wants to hire a new CSO, they call Chuck. Okay. So what Chuck did is he basically, you have your DISC test, you have your Wonderlic test, but what he actually did that was so brilliant was he actually adapted. So there's basically roughly about 19 different personality types. And the personality types really, once you're 12 and they've tested it, if they take this test and once you're 12 and you've taken it every 10 years after, it's exactly the same.
Really?
And so what he actually did, and it breaks down to kind of 4 components, right? So the first component is what's called your A trait, which is your autonomy. It is, and I'm sure you're an entrepreneur, so I guarantee you, somebody's like, hey, I think you should do it this way. You're like, nope. They're like, you have to follow these rules. You're going to be like, I'm going to go use this as a guide, right?
Yep.
And that's like your A trait, your autonomy, right? Then you have what's called your B trait. Your B trait is your social ability, but don't think of it like how social I am is I need to either work in groups really well, or I can put my head down really well, and that's kind of on your B trait. And then you have your C trait, which is your level of patience, okay? So, which is like, hey, you know what? I would rather it be 100% perfect, and I'm gonna not put any rush. I understand that perfection takes time. Or you're gonna be like, you know what? Let's get to 80%, right? Yeah. And then you have your D trait, and that is what's called your level of detail. And it's your level of detail in your whole life. Meaning, for me, I'm very detailed when it comes to work, but I have 4 junk drawers in my house, right? Because it's not helping me get to my goal of making money, right? Well, when you go through this and you take this culture index test, and what he uses is he has these profiles. And what he does is if somebody wants to hire a COO, they have to have what is basically like what's called an architect personality, which means extremely autonomous so they can see the CEO's vision, but extreme level of detailness, right? And following and everything. So we went through all these things. Well, one of the traits that anybody that's either like a trailblazer or an enterpriser, which I know you, so I know that's what you are, that's what I am, is the simple fact of shiny object syndrome.
100%,
okay?
yeah.
And what he basically broke it down is the problem and why it's been so exacerbated is everybody knows, like you and I were kind of talking before the show started, you guys are going to do what? Probably 500 billion this year in real estate?
The goal is 700 million in just retail alone.
Yep. So 700 million. Now, most people in their math, in their brain, they're like, okay, $700 million. I know realtors make between 2 and 3%. Oh my gosh, that's $21 million. Austin's making $21 million a year, right? And that's what they think. You and your brain are like, no, we pay our agents, we have our marketing, we do this, and then whatever that's left, you're reinvesting it, right? And so you're building this big business, but the cash flow from that business isn't giving you the lifestyle that you want because you are impatient like I am, right? And so what happens is we are in the middle of building something and then we feel like, man, I want to be making more money right now. Hey, you know what? This guy on social media isn't doing as big of things as me. This person isn't. They say that they're doing ATMs and making $80,000 a month. I'm going to go start an ATM business and do it. And his whole thing and I'll never forget this quote, somebody asked him, they said, what is the most valuable thing? And the guy is a billionaire. Yeah. He's built multiple companies. And somebody said, what is the most important thing that has led to your continued success in your industry? And he said, there is no plan B ever for me. I will never allow a plan. My plan is plan A. It's this business. He said, because if you have a plan B, your plan A is dead.
Wow.
And so he said that is what you have to do. Now, when your plan A is autonomous and it's running itself, you sold your company, dude, have 12 other subcategories of businesses. But your plan B is that shiny object syndrome, right? And I didn't realize it until 40, right? You luckily did it at 29. But I think, don't you think that plays into a fact of social media really just crushes, it fills people with shiny object syndrome.
Terrible, because people don't know that information.
Yeah.
So you just described it perfectly, right? We look at social media and everybody else seems like they have it more figured out than you do, right? And they're making more money than you are. And, you're building something, to your point, that could be phenomenal one day, but you pull off the gas to go do something else so you personally can make a little bit more cash right now today, not realizing that in the long run, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, right? And man, I learned that. And I think social media is terrible for that. I think pre-social media, you probably almost didn't even have that problem because you didn't know what the hell people were doing.
No.
You didn't know what your neighbor was doing, And so I think, you really have to be careful in the day and age that we live in, man, that if you're onto something and you really are a believer that whatever it is that you're doing will work one day, go all in on that.
Yep.
Go all in on that, and don't be afraid to say no to everything else. And you will thank yourself one day for doing that. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, and we were talking off camera about this, but when I started my company SOAR, what I did is I had to step down from my mortgage company full time. Well, I wasn't going to take all my pay, but not putting in the work, right? So when I had to do this, I sold my Ferrari. I sold my boat. I sold my houses. I sold all these other things. And internally inside, I was like, oh my God, I don't want everybody to think like I'm poor, but you get over it. And you and I know, like you own a massive real estate company and you had to make the sacrifice of like, hey, I need to pour my cash. I'm not going to have all the fancy cars or fancy houses, right? I mean, and I think, so for kind of going into that, when you look at your businesses right now, right? And let's just say, and we're buddies, so I know you're open, is what people obviously want. If you're going to look at it and you're going to say, one, most amount of money you've ever made in a year, and was that the same year that you grew your net worth by the most?
The most amount of money I've personally ever made in a year is right around $1 million in a year, right?
Yep.
Now, the companies make a lot more money than that. But, you said it right on the head. First of all, I really don't need to make more than that. I mean, even $500,000 a year, right? I mean, you can live a pretty good life on that, And now that I've recognized that I'm playing the long game, I'm okay with that outcome because I know that one day it's just going to be a freaking avalanche, right?
Yep.
Like all of a sudden, I'm going to go from making $500,000 to $1 million a year to $20 million a year pretty much overnight, right? Because, well, not overnight, but you worked all those years. And then it ends up kind of happening overnight, right? And dude, I intentionally don't pay myself a lot of money for my companies. Right now I'm very conservative. I make, right in that ballpark of money every year. And I'm okay with that outcome right now.
Yeah. And that's what I think a lot of people need to hear is because they see people doing these things and growing these businesses, and everybody on social media makes it seem like they are making so much money. And I'll tell you, the reality of the situation is their biggest expense in their life is proving they're making a lot of money, right? They're having to buy the fancy cars, lease the crazy houses, do all of this stuff to prove to people they're doing it. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because if you're that mindset of like, hey, dude, I'll tell you right now, like, I'm not pretending to live that life. I'm saying no to that. I'm choosing to make less money than a lot of people because I'm betting on myself on the long run. And that is the reality of what it is, growing very big companies.
100%, dude. I have people in my organizations that make more money than me.
Yeah, me too.
Multiple, right? And I'm okay with that because I know what I'm building, right? And I know that what I have is extremely valuable. And one day I can flip a switch and I can make as much money as I want, right? But I don't need to today. I'm 29. I've done all the cool stuff. I just sold my Duramax. I had a Duramax High Country I just sold. I sold an Audi. I sold my boat. I've got the Plaid, right? But I'm like, dude, I don't need all this crap. I just don't freaking need it, man. And it's just, it's a lot of weight, right? Like I don't, every week something needs a freaking oil change. Something like, it's like, dude, it's just too much. Like my companies already take too much of my time. I want to live a minimalistic type of life for like the next 5 years. I'll be 34, 35. And then sure, maybe at that point I go and I live the cool life, whatever, we'll play it by ear.
Now, and I think a lot of times people too, and one of the things people want to know how businesses work and they cash flow, right? So let's take your two big businesses, right? You have your real estate company, and then you have your wholesaling company. So let's say your wholesaling company. So let's take me through a normal deal. Like on a normal deal, like what type of gross profit or like, the difference, on your top line revenue, how does that get kind of roughly divided up? You don't have to use exact numbers, you can use percentages. And then what does that leave for somebody that's actually running a wholesale company? Because I know a lot of times people come out there and like, I'm going to open up a wholesale company. In my mind, I'm like, to be honest, why don't you just start wholesaling? You're going to make a lot more money just doing it for yourself than starting the company.
Or working for a guy like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, you're better off just working for me because you'll make more money.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Basically the way it shapes out is that, and we're probably the second or third largest. We're top 5 for sure in the nation, right? But we pay about 45% right off the top just in commission.
Yep.
Okay, so we have acquisitions and dispositions, and the top tier. There's tiers, obviously. Top tier for AC is 25%. So if they fall into top tier, they make 25%. So we make 10 grand. The company makes 10 grand. AC guy will make $2,500.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's a disposition, right? They have to sell the deal. Their top tier is 20%. So 45%, if we make 10 grand, 4,500 is gone. Assuming they're top tier, right? Which they have to hit a certain amount of volume within a calendar week to get to top tier. A lot of our top guys, they're top tier, obviously, right?
Yep.
So you have 55% left now to the company. Now we have 22,000 square foot of office throughout the valley, right? We have transaction coordination department, we have admin, we have VAs, we have all kinds of stuff, and that doesn't even factor in marketing, right? So I would say after it's all said and done, we probably run about a 40 to 45% margin when it comes down to it, and that's only because the marketing and the overhead for the personnel is actually a smaller percentage because we make so much money.
Yes.
That it equals a smaller amount of money, right?
Yep.
So we probably 55% in overhead after it's all said and done. We take home 45, and then I have partners.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then we can't just have no money in the bank. You got to leave extra money in the bank. So we want to continue to grow. We don't want to stay stagnant.
Yep.
So if we have a really good month, then we're gonna leave 200 grand in the bank that month, right? Every month we want that bank account to keep growing. And, so at the end of the day, we pay ourselves all a very healthy salary, right? It isn't a lot of money. It's also, I'm very grateful. It's not a little amount of money either. But, I'm not paying myself from the wholesale company. I probably will pay myself $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Yeah,
from the wholesale company.
And that's what I want people to hear is like so many people, I think, feel like they have to be an entrepreneur to make money. You have to understand that the guys in your office that work for you are a version of an entrepreneur.
Dude.
The 100%. Would you not agree?
100%. I have guys in my office that'll make $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what I'm going to make.
Yeah.
Now, I own multiple companies, so therefore I'm able to make a little bit more from the other ones as well. But like, dude, and they don't, when they go home at night, they get a good night's friggin' sleep, man. I don't, obviously I've gotten better at balance and everything over the years, but like they're able to just, they only have to focus on what they have to focus on. When I'm thinking about the big picture, the whole thing, the big, what's going to happen tomorrow? Where's the market headed? What should we do with the, there's so many variables, right? When they can make $400,000 or $500,000 a year, work Monday through Friday, go snowboarding on the weekend, and I tell them all the time, dude, I tell my sales guys, I say, dude, make $400,000 or $500,000 a year working for me, live below your means, don't freaking buy a bunch of junk, right? Do it for 3 to 5 years, stack $1.5 million, $2 million bucks, go buy a bunch of rental properties, and you're set for life.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to be me.
Exactly. And I think what happens is people don't talk enough to people like us that have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. And if they just came up to us, people came up to me and was like, hey, man, I'm thinking of starting a company. What should I do? I'd be like, nope. Go be in 1099 independent contractor so you don't have to worry about like, okay, I got to close 104 deals this month to break even. And then every deal over 104, I can make $1,500. Like, you know that for every one of your companies. You know that number you got to hit to break even. Whereas that guy, he can completely have no risk, no concern, and that weighs on you when you're operating your businesses. And when you have multiple businesses, I'm sure you have days where you're dealing with a major fire on your real estate company, which affects how your performance is in your wholesale company because it sucks you away. And with that kind of going in, the other thing I think a lot of times that people feel like in this market is that with high interest rates that have been prolonged and all of these types of things that you can't make any money flipping. And kind of before we got onto this, we were still breaking down, margins. And we were talking about the fact of like, hey, if we're going to buy a house and develop a house, these are the brackets we need to make sure we land in because these people are still kind of buying. So when you're looking at, buying a property and you're looking at buying and flipping because you flipped a lot of houses, right? So when you go in and you sit down, what are a couple of the major points that you look for to still make a deal work in today's environment?
Yeah, you really have to be good at doing the math, right? I teach people. We have an education program too, which is another big company that we run, where I teach people how to wholesale and flip and all that.
And what's that one called?
Flip and Simple.
Flip and Simple.
Yep, Flip and Simple. And so at the end of the day, you really have to know your ARV, right? Your after repair value. What are houses going for in that neighborhood that are what yours is going to look like?
Yes.
Right? So what will, and then are there even houses in that neighborhood that have been flipped? Because if there's not, then you're the first guy. There always has to be a first guy in every neighborhood in America, right? Because every decade or so, if you built a brand new neighborhood today, 2024 build neighborhood, a whole subdivision, in about a decade, they'll start to eventually get to where they're out of, they need to be remodeled, right? And some of the homeowners in that subdivision will let their house go more than others, and then you'll have opportunity in there.
Yep.
Well, one flipper has to be the guy to start and go there and renovate a property, right? And he's always taken the biggest risk because the appraiser is going to have a tough time comping that first deal when they go to sell to a retail buyer, right? So if you're the second or third or fourth or fifth guy, it makes it a little easier. As you look at properties in that area, say, okay, there's already flippers in the area. Here's what they're getting once they remodel. Okay, here's what I'm going to get. I'm going to back out my commissions, take out my hard money. Because if I'm going to wholesale it, then I got to think like a flipper, and if I'm going to flip it, I got to think like a flipper, right? So, and then you back all that out. You look at, okay, what are my renovation costs going to be? And then I would just go a little bit more conservative. I'm finding right now in today's environment that whatever I think it'll sell at. Every flip, I have 12 flips going on right now. Every flip that I have going on right now, like literally think everyone, I have to look at my sheet. Every buyer is asking for concessions right now. Now, I'm talking sub $1 million because most of my bread and butter is under $1 million. They're all asking 10, 15, 20 grand, right? So you got to factor that in, right? That can eat all your profit real quick. And there's a lot of other variables. And, to be honest with you, the last out of 12 flips that I'm doing, probably 2 or 3 I'll lose money on. Not a lot. A couple grand, right? When we win big. When we lose small. Which is the way you want to do it, obviously, right? But, I think that you just have to be good at doing the math. And if you're not good at doing the math, you shouldn't be getting into the game. And you have to always consider, too, that at any given time, in theory, the market could go a different direction. I'm not saying it will, but you have to take that into consideration. Depending on the election, there's a lot of variables. We don't know. People in 2007 didn't know the market was about to crash, right? I mean, maybe a handful of people saw it coming, but the vast majority of people, they didn't freaking see it coming, or they would have planned for it.
You know? And I think, too, the way I look at it right now, and I have not been buying assets in real estate personally, other than my primary home, which obviously Austin sold me my house. And with the big thing that I looked at is I broke it down and I said, okay, we know that everything runs in cycles, right? We know that real estate has had a really good long cycle, right? Now, there is a shortage of demand. Real estate is always going to do well. But when I looked at it from, okay, I used to flip houses. I'm going to look at my cost on capital. And I say, okay, I got $250,000 to deploy. And I look and I find these and do the exact math that you're doing. And I'm like, okay, if everything works in my favor on this and I buy this house, if I could sell it in the time, I factor in my points with my hard money lender, the interest rates, all of this. Okay, I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy it for $600,000. I'm going to have put 20% down. Then I'm going to do $150,000 in rehab. I got all my carrying costs. So my $250,000, I could make $50,000 on that $250,000, right? If everything works out. If it doesn't work out and anything shifts on me, I can lose $10,000 right now in this market, right? So the way I looked at it is I said, okay, stock market, it's at all-time highs. It's gone ahead and run. When I broke it down, I said, okay, everything runs in cycles. Real estate has been nearing the end of a very long, good run cycle, right? And I look at the stock market, been in a very good long run cycle. And then I looked at cryptocurrency. And I said, okay, cryptocurrency runs in 4-year cycles. We just got out of 2022 a nasty bear market, 2023 nasty bear market, 2024 is the halving year, which you look at things in cycles. So that's why for me personally, I've taken, if I have $250,000, I look at it and say, hey, crypto for me is the best risk-adjusted returns in the short term for me to be able to do that. Now, I know you're a crypto guy, and you follow some of these things. Now, with that being said, say I gave you $250,000 and I said, hey, you got to turn this $250,000 and a year from now, you got to get me the biggest return, right? Would you right now do a flip? Would you right now buy crypto? Would you right now buy stock? Which route would you go?
If I only had a year and I had to get the biggest return, I think you're right on the money. I think it's probably Bitcoin, Ethereum, or maybe an altcoin. The right altcoin, right? But even Bitcoin, I think. I mean, I'd love to get your opinion. I think probably by end of 2025, middle to end of 2025. I mean, anywhere from 100 grand to 400 grand. I mean, it somewhere in that ballpark is, I think, where the Bitcoin will land, right? So, I think that is a phenomenal place to park cash. We're at $1.2 trillion market cap right now. I mean, gold is at a $15 trillion market cap. I mean, dude, like imagine if in a decade from now, Bitcoin just got to the same market cap as gold. Dude, I mean, $1 million of Bitcoin, right? So, and I think in a decade from now, that'll happen.
And it's a lot easier to buy than physical gold.
Right? And now you can buy it through BlackRock or you can buy iBit or whatever, if you don't want to actually, hold a Bitcoin, right? So I think if I had a year today, right? We're filming end of June 2024. I think it would be crypto all day, every day, right? If I had a couple of years, like right now I'm the co-GP on a big multifamily deal with a buddy of mine, so I'm helping him raise some capital. And I think if I had 2 or 3 years, I think, a good multifamily deal right now, because you can, like this deal that I'm helping raise capital on, he bought it from a distressed seller that was in a floating rate. The rate, and so they had to get out. 220 unit deal in Arlington, Texas. And also they're renovating the unit, so he got a steal on the building. Bought it for $28 million, I want to say. And his cost base is incredible, right? They're going to renovate everything, and I think when interest rates go back down, that's a $60 million multifamily.
Oh, easily.
And so, but that's going to be more than a year, I think. That's a probably 3 to 5 year turn time. So that might be a secondary thing, and that's something I'm actually doing right now.
And I think that's where a lot of times I love that you shared that, because I think there's strategy on things, right? And so that's the exact strategy I'm taking right now is I sold a bunch of real estate and I've taken that real estate and I deployed it into crypto. Now my run on crypto that I'm looking for is I actually pay attention to the crypto cycle, and I know, okay, for the next 9 to 14 months, I cannot find personally, in my opinion, a better risk-adjusted return.
Agreed.
But after 14 months, I'm getting out. I am not getting back into crypto for another 2.5 to 3 years. And at that point, 100% real estate is the play, because what I can do is take all my capital gains that I incurred in cryptocurrency and roll those in to multifamily or real estate, cost seg, get a depreciation. You and I are both real estate professionals, which means those depreciation and cost segs offset our ordinary income. And that is the play and the strategy. And so I love that you said that, because I feel like a lot of times in the world, it's stocks versus crypto versus real estate. And the real strategy is all of them, depending on what the cycle is and depending if where you are at from an income perspective, right? Do you want cash flow? Because if you want cash flow, okay, I can understand that. Crypto's not the best way for cash flow, right? You're better off investing other ways. But if you're like, hey, I really want to get into some long-term net worth, so I got 20 grand, I can turn that 20 grand into 70 grand in crypto. Now this will allow me to go into a real estate asset. I can eliminate those capital gains, take that 70 grand, control an asset that is worth way more. Because I mean, even in your guys' fund that you guys are raising, people forget, like in that $20 million, I guarantee you your entry isn't $5 million.
No. No, definitely not. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think, and I'm buying crypto right now. I'm excited to talk to you about it too in a little while after the show or now, whenever. But I'm buying and holding, buying and holding. Every day, actually, I have recurring buys set up on a lot of the big coins where it just drafts. I'm dollar cost averaging. Every day it comes out of my checking account, right? Literally daily. Because I want to catch it at every price. And so, I've been buying I've been having recurring buys for probably 8 months now. And what's funny is, I think, when did I do your podcast? How long ago was that? Oh man, dude, It might have been like a year ago.
I think it was a year ago, and when I was on your podcast, I remember we were talking about BlackRock, and I was like, I think this ETF's going to get passed, and we were talking about all that, and we were kind of going through it, and I think that's where I feel like this time with a lot of people in crypto, they are now viewing this as a real asset.
They are.
Right? And even like have you noticed the change in some of the talk? I know 4 years ago, and I've always been into it, so I've been kind of too close to it, I guess you would say. But I would have like my barber, and he would be like, "Oh, now's a good time to buy crypto," But I definitely won't hold it. I don't understand it while I do it. But I feel like now when it was a shift where people can invest in this in their 401ks. They can invest in this in their retirement account. You got an Ethereum ETF that's coming. Have you noticed a change in the kind of the way people are treating it?
Huge. I mean, governments are buying it, right? Like we're talking about real adoption now, right? Where I think, and even me, I was probably one of the people 4 or 5 years ago that didn't fully understand it. I owned it, but I was telling you a little while ago, right? I had 85 Bitcoin in 2020. I sold it all, right? Every last penny, I sold it all, And so, and then I really regretted that, right?
Yeah.
Going when it went to 65 grand or whatever. I sold when it was at like 12 grand, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I just missed out on like 5 million, right? And that was just at that time, But yeah, dude, I think that adoption is real, right? It's easier than ever to buy. I mean, dude, I bought a couple thousand shares of iBit, right? On Webull. I was just like, hey, it was like $32 a share, to buy into it at the time. And I think it's 35 a share now, but I think it'll be 200 eventually when Bitcoin,
easily.
So I was like, I'll buy a couple thousand shares of that just to diversify. I don't want all my Bitcoin in one wallet or one whatever.
Exactly.
That's my biggest concern still is just making sure, like, have you heard of Tangem?
Oh, yeah.
It also have the Tangem wallet.
Yep.
And then I've got a little bit in Coinbase.
Yep.
I've got a little bit in, like, the Webull.
Yep.
And I try to kind of keep it a little bit separate so that if one got hacked, it wouldn't be my whole portfolio, right?
Yes.
Which I think is more rare than it's ever been. I feel like the securities are a lot better now and everything. But, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think because you hear the horror stories.
Yeah.
So, like, you have 21 million Bitcoin that are ever going to be in existence, right? And there's been, 19.4 or something like that issued. And there's about 4 million Bitcoin that are lost.
Yep.
And it's like with people investing in real estate. Everybody remembers that something horrible that happened in 2008, right? Oh, mortgages crashed the world. Yep. What happened is the world evolved. So anytime a new type of investing comes into place, people find a way to exploit it. They better it over time, and then it gets regulated, and that's where it's at. Same thing when the stock market crashed and, the caused the Great Depression, right? Tech bubble comes out and crashes the world, and, the dot-com bubble. You have crypto that starts coming out, and you hear about the guy that bought pizza with this thing, and the guys that lost all these things.
Yeah.
People have to understand, back in the day, when you got cryptocurrency, you kept it on a USB drive, and there was nothing backed up. If you lost that USB drive, you were crap out of luck, right? And then on top of that, they were buying it for $1, $2, pennies. So hindsight's always 20/20. So you look at going back to 2013, somebody's like, oh, cool, I put $500 in Bitcoin and I bought 1,000 Bitcoin.
Yep.
Like, people move, nobody's talking about it. It wasn't like something important to them to keep, right? Like, that was just the reality. I mean, I've lost baseball card collections that would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Because they weren't when we were a kid. So now what ends up happening is you have two types of wallets. You have your hardware wallets, which are like your cold storage wallets, and then you have your wallets that are basically tied to an exchange. And now when you keep your money on an exchange, the only time you should really keep your money on an exchange is if you're planning on buying it or selling it, trading it or selling it within a relative short period of time, right? And even though you have certain things that when you hear about hacks, they're hacking into the exchanges, right? And they're pulling it off. Now, when you have something like a Trezor wallet or a Ledger wallet, that's a hardware wallet. And what that is, it looks like a USB drive, right? And you just take your coins, you move it directly on to a Ledger wallet. And everyone's like, what if you lose your Ledger? Well, here's the thing. The way it works is with the Ledger wallet, it looks just like a USB drive, but they got smart. That is backed up on hardware systems so that if you lose that wallet, the coins aren't actually on that little USB
they're on the
drive.
blockchain.
They're on the blockchain. all that is basically your key to see that wallet on the blockchain, right? So if you lose that wallet or I've lost 2 ledgers in all honesty, which had a couple $1 million on them, but all I did was I had my seed phrase, and my seed phrase is in a safety deposit box, and I took multiple pictures of it. And then what I did was I gave one to my parents to go ahead and put it in their safety deposit box, right? And then I did another one where I'm not going to say who it is, but I gave the same thing. So even if no matter what happened, as long as I have one of those 3 and I could lose my hardware wallet, it's always fine. And then what you can do with that hardware wallet, for a lot of people that are unaware, like, well, Brian, what happens if the market's not crashing? You literally can plug your little USB drive into your computer and you can sell things right then and there on it, right? And so I think a lot of people, their fear of crypto is all those hacks. Well, that's like saying, oh my God, my car got stolen, but I left it unlocked in the parking lot, in the ghetto, and it was a Rolls Royce. You know what I mean?
I'm never going to buy a car again. It's like, no, you're going to buy another.
Exactly.
100%, dude. I couldn't agree more. And now there's more information available than ever. Go on YouTube, watch a video about everything you just said. There will be a tutorial of somebody showing you step by step how to move your crypto to the wallet and do the whole thing, right? Like there will be, 500 videos that you can watch right on YouTube. You know?
And I think too, kind of the last thing to kind of wrap it up is, when you're looking at like your life right now and you're looking at where you're spending your time, and let's say that you had everything taken away from you, right? And you were just making a W-2 job. You've owned so many different businesses, and this is why I want to really ask you this question. Of all the side businesses that you did, what one took you kind of the least amount of money to potentially start it up that had the best amount of cash flow, would you say?
Wholesaling.
Yep.
Yeah, wholesaling. Yeah, I mean, because you know, anybody can do it, man. I mean, like, you literally don't need any money at all. You don't need to be an agent. You don't need really anything, dude. You need to find a good deal. That's all you need to do. You're marketing. Wholesaling is just marketing.
Yep.
Can you find a good deal?
Yep.
Good deal, sell itself.
Yep.
Good deal, put it on Facebook, put it on good deal will sell. You don't even need a big buyer's list.
Yep.
You can sell a good deal, right? Can you find a good deal? Then by the way, if you found a great deal, you have multiple exit strategies. It doesn't just have, you can flip it, you can get hard money, you can keep it as a rental, you can renovate it, you can wholesale it, you can fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
But wholesaling is the lowest barrier of entry. If I had to start all over tomorrow, I would just build a wholesale company.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 100%. And we kill it with wholesaling, and we do make a lot of money, you know? And dude, it's just a try and true. I mean, like, it'll never go away. I know they're trying to like ban it here and there, but there's always going to be a loophole.
Yeah.
Wholesaling's been around forever, right? If you have to double close it, you can double close it. If you need to get transactional funding, you can, whatever. But there will always be a way to wholesale a deal.
Yep. And then the last question I kind of had for you was, when you look at everything and you have those moments in your life where you meet somebody and they say something to you and something clicks, what would you say is one person or one thing that somebody said something to you that changed a moment in your life that ended up making you more money, would you say?
There's so many, man. Probably how you do anything is how you do everything. You know, like, I remember a mentor told me that about a decade ago, and it really opened my eyes to, you know, the way that we are as human beings is we kind of approach everything with the same level of energy, if you will, right? So if we can raise our level of energy and focus on, let's just say, if I brush my teeth like a champion, right? I make my freaking bed like a champion. Like, I do everything like a champion, then ultimately I'm going to go perform like a champion, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they try to perform really well in one area of life, but in the other areas of life, they're really not giving it their all. You know, they're being lazy, they're slacking off, whatever it might be. And then it's like, well, of course you're going to work and you're freaking tired and you're not eating healthy. You're going home, you're watching Netflix for 5 hours. You're sleeping in. You're not going to the gym. You're watching the news all the time. You're never consuming the right information, right? And no wonder you're making not the amount of money you want to make. You know, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. That doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect.
No,
but it does mean that you can really give a real effort from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed to anything that you do, whether it be cooking a meal, whether it be even the littlest of things, walking your dog, you know, really go at that thing give it everything you got.
Yep.
Right? Like, do it to the best of your ability. Don't just half-ass make your bed. Make that thing look beautiful, because when you come home that night, you're going to get energy out of that room.
Yep.
Right? And I'm just telling you, man, I learned that at a young age, and now when I do something, I'm going to do it all the way, or I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
I'm an all or nothing kind of guy.
Yep.
And that really has made me a lot of money in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's so well. And I think one of the things that, we're both Christians, and I was actually at church this weekend, and Mark Driscoll, the pastor of Trinity, said something. I thought it was, so you are a generation behind me in that 20 to 30-year-old range. They have, you know how hard it is. You people, right? Yep. It's very hard to get somebody that is in their 20s to be able to work, right? Very. It's kind of taught to them in a university. They go to a university and they're not taught to get a job while they're in the university. They're taught about theory. It's that whole life talking about everything in theory rather than hard practical work.
Yep.
And it was something that goes exactly with what you said. And it goes, Jesus came down to this earth. And obviously God put his son down here on this earth. Mm-hmm. Did he have him go and live this leisurely life for his whole life and then start talking about philosophy? No, he came down here, and for 30 years, he worked 6 days a week with his dad in a carpenter's office, breaking his back, working 6 days a week, killing himself. And it wasn't until the last 3 years of his life that he started going out and preaching. So 90% of his life, he spent working 6 days a week on backbreaking labor, giving everything of his focus, while at the same time, he knows he's the Son of God.
Literally.
Right?
Talk about humility, too, and work ethic.
Yeah. And it just shows you that a lot of things, God even prepared his son to go through 90% of his life putting in the effort, working with no glory, no anything, not even going out and telling people of everything of what he was, to then the last 10%, he was able to really reap the rewards and do what his plan was. So when people look at their lives and they're, 30, 40, 50 years old, think about it in your comparison, whether you believe or not. It takes 90% of 30 years of focusing, doing everything you can before you're getting ready to be able to do something. And I think it goes exactly that point of people, they don't focus on 90% doing a good job at what they do. They do 20% that they're just required, what their boss tells them to do, and the other 80% of their life, they want to either get handouts or just hope they get lucky.
100%. Dude, I heard another guy tell me the other day, ultra wealthy human being, said, Austin, he said, he basically looked at me and he said, you could, if you wanted to, you could kind of screw around for the next 10 years. Not that I would, right? But he said, when you look at people who are wealthy, you make the majority of your money in your 50s, your 60s, and your 70s. He's like 100% of the time. He's like the majority of the Warren Buffetts of the world, all of the bulk of the wealth came in their 50s, their 60s, and their 70s. He's like, so you can screw up 100 times in your 20s and your 30s, and even part of your 40s, and you can still make a lot of money in your life, right? But it goes back to the effort, because it is interesting. Sometimes I find, and it goes back to what we were talking about full circle, with, paying yourself a more conservative amount of money, right? It's like, yeah, but I have my whole life to make money. I got to build, work right now, so that in my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the wealth can compound.
Yes.
Right? Because now you have that money that is just going to compound, and it'll compound quick. I mean, Darren Hardy wrote the book, The Compound Effect.
Yeah.
A penny doubled every day for 30 days. I mean, dude, do the math on that.
So, the last thing too is, if you guys don't watch Austin's podcast, you guys got to check it out. I've been to his studio. The dude takes it to another level. So where's the best place for people to kind of find you at, brother?
Probably IG, Austin Zaback. We got the podcast, Austin Zaback Show. Any social media platform, but IG probably the best one.
Sweet, man. And then the last thing is I know a lot of people are going to hear this about, you, who's done 20-something businesses, saying wholesale. What is the site they could go learn more about the education course you have on wholesaling?
There's a link in my bio on IG, but you can also go to www.flippinsimple.com, flippin' without the G.
Perfect. Well, sweet, brother. Well, it's always a pleasure, man. So, I'm super excited to have you on here again, and thanks so much for coming in, brother.
Dude, I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, you're the man, and I really appreciate being on.
Yeah, of course, man. Take care, guys.